What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live. And instead of power ranking these teams from number 14 to number 1, it is still weird, by the way, thinking about 14 playoff teams. I know this is like the second year of this thing, but it is still odd to me that it's not 12. But anyways, instead of power ranking the teams from number 14 to number 1, in this video, I'm going to tier rank every team in the NFL playoffs from the no chance to the favorites, to the best teams. So within this power ranking video, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not just going to go through my list one by one, but I'm going to give you an in-depth look of where I think they're heading this playoffs and how I feel about them entering the playoffs and what tier I feel they're really on. Are they like a true Super Bowl team? Are they lucky to be in the playoffs? Are they a dark horse? So there's different levels to these playoff teams, and that is what I'm trying to aim for in this video. Before I rank these teams, make sure that you do spike that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. This will be the final rankings video in terms of power rankings for the season. There's really no point after we enter the playoffs to rank these teams because we're just looking to see who wins at the end of the day now. So this is the final power rankings video, and then we'll move on to the offseason, and that's where we really get into the position rankings and all that other fun stuff. I do want to give a quick shout out to Underdog Fantasy, and I myself am going to be playing on Underdog Fantasy. I think I'm probably going to be live streaming a draft that I do for Underdog Fantasy because Best Ball is back for the NFL playoffs. I haven't talked about Underdog in quite some time, and you guys know that it's my favorite fantasy platform. I've been over there grinding on the pick'ems. I highly recommend it. Use my code BLV. The link is in the description. Right now, if you sign up, they'll match up to $100 to get you started for the playoffs. So make sure you head over to Underdog Fantasy because they're doing more best ball tournaments for the playoffs. So if you miss fantasy football, maybe it didn't go well for you during the regular season, it's your time in the playoffs now. So you sign up on Underdog Fantasy and you can draft, let's say you love the Packers. You could draft Aaron Rodgers. You could draft Devontae Adams. You could stack them up and go for the whole thing on Underdog Fantasy. There's a bunch of different tournaments. There's weekly prizes over there. So head over there. Link is in the description. Use the code BLV when you sign up. I'm going to probably be live streaming that tomorrow, so check it out. But enough of that. Let's get to my power rankings. And I'm going to share my screen. I've got the tier rankings thing open so that I can do it that way instead of the typical 14 through 1. What's going on, everybody in the chat? Connor says he got his wisdom teeth out. Well, I know that feeling. Hopefully you're feeling all right, Connor. Reek, what's going on, bro? Nuke, JT, Bus Boy, what's up? How you doing? It's been a while, bro. Nicholas Gill, Hector, what's up, man? And Sports Fan. We got Jeremy in the chat. So shout out to everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining me here. Let's rank some football teams, shall we? All right. So what you should be seeing right now is the tier rankings list. And I've sorted it so that all the playoff teams are there. I'm going to add myself here. Where should I put myself? Let's see. Myself. I'm going to go up here. All right. No. Actually, let's go right there. Should be okay. All right. So let's get rolling. Favorites, contenders, dark horses, could surprise, and no chance. So at no chance, we have the teams that I think are just lucky to be in the playoffs, the teams that I don't think anybody expects anything from. And this is my opinion, guys. So this isn't based on odds in Vegas. This isn't based on your opinion. This is based entirely on what I think about these teams. Nothing else is influencing it other than my personal opinion. Could surprise are the teams that I feel like they probably could win 1 or 2 games. I think they could make a run, but it would probably have to take a lot for that to happen. And it would be very unlikely for them to get to the Super Bowl and pretty improbable for them to win the Super Bowl. The dark horse teams are the teams that I legitimately could see a world where they win the Super Bowl, but not a lot of people are talking about them or thinking about them in that way. Contenders are teams that are that second level where they're not quite the favorites that everybody is picking on their brackets, but they're those teams that are pretty likely to win a couple playoff games, but they need to put together their best football to overcome the favorites. And the favorites are the teams that everybody thinks are going to win. The top dogs, the pretty much across the board consensus best teams. And I'm going to give you my sense and my flavor on all of these different tiers. So let's start off with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that I think is fortunate to be in the playoffs. I do not see them from a talent perspective as a playoff team. And guys, I've been doing the research for different graphics and my previews, and it is clear and evident that the Pittsburgh Steelers are the worst playoff team this season from an analytical perspective. They have by far the least efficient offense. Their defense is definitely susceptible on the ground. They rank dead last in the NFL versus the run. So there are areas to this football team that are major weaknesses. The offensive line, Ben Roethlisberger, the run defense. Now, what I will say about the Steelers is they're not going to go down without a fight. If you're a Steelers fan and you're hoping for any sort of prayer to beat the Chiefs, at least what you can hang your hat on is you've got Ben Roethlisberger. He's won 2 Super Bowls. You've got Mike Tomlin. He's a Super Bowl head coach. You are not going to be fazed by going to Arrowhead and playing a playoff game because you've got those 2 guys leading the way. No matter how Ben's playing this year, you've got that guy as your quarterback. You've got some playmakers. You got Deontay Johnson. You got Chase Claypool. You got Fairmouth. You got Harris. There are some things to like. And then on top of that, your defense has a front 7 that is capable of taking over and winning a game. So I think the Steelers are the least impressive team from the regular season to make the playoffs. But that doesn't mean that they have absolutely no chance of winning in the playoffs. I will say that much. I think that they might be getting a little bit too disrespected by the odds makers out there. I think the Chiefs are about 13-point underdogs, which I think is very disrespectful for any playoff team, no matter who it is. And given that you've got the sack master TJ Watt, you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary, you've got Cameron Hayward, who's had one of his best seasons. You've got playmakers on that side of the ball. And I understand that you got blown out by the Chiefs. But I'm going to be positive here about the Steelers and say, I don't think you have much of a chance. And that's me being negative, saying I'm going to be positive. I don't think you have much of a chance. But I do think that the way we're talking about the Steelers is disrespectful. And that's what I want to say about that team. Now, where their downfall is I just don't think they're good enough protecting the quarterback. I don't think Ben is dynamic enough at this point with his arm, with his mobility, with his ability to make throw after throw after throw. And the run game is not consistent enough. It shows sparks, but it's not consistent enough. And the cornerback position, the secondary, mostly in general, can be susceptible if you don't get pressure. So we know that this team is one of the weaker ones entering the playoffs, but I did want to clear that up because I do think that there's a level of like understanding where they should be, but also giving them some respect for joining the fight here in the playoffs. So the Steelers do join the first tier, but I wanted to talk it through for you, which I'm going to do for every team. So let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. So the San Francisco 49ers are a team that I'm really, really excited to see in these playoffs, and I think they could be a team that loses in the first round. I could see them going to the Super Bowl. I really could. The San Francisco 49ers, defensively, I think are analytically, statistically a lot more impressive than a lot of people think. They're top 5 in both run success rate and pass success rate. They are a pretty good pass rushing team with a deeper defensive line than you would think because they don't have D Ford. You know, they're not the D line that they were a couple years ago with DeForest Buckner, but they've got depth, right? They've got Epucam on the edge. They've got Arden Key, who's developed into a good player. Obviously, Nick Bosa. And I think a lot of people forget about Armstead. He's a good player. DJ Jones is a good player. Maurice Hurst is a good player. They've got a very deep defensive line, and they're good versus the run. They're good at rushing the passer. They're good in both regards, both facets. And the linebacking core is one of the strongest in the NFL, especially the top 2 guys with Greenlaw and Warner. And the safety duo, I think, super underrated with Tart and Ward. Now, where they're weak is their cornerback group. I think teams can attack them there, but they've been pretty steady, especially when they can dominate up front. It kind of hides their deficiencies in the back end. But I think DeMeco Ryans has developed this defense, and he's taken a defense with, I feel like, less talent than they've had under Robert Saleh and made them a more competent unit by developing their scheme and adding layers to their scheme that they didn't have a couple of years ago. I think DeMeco Ryans has done a good job of just adding more flavor and different dimensions to this defensive scheme, using different coverages, using, different blitz packages that we didn't see from them in years past under Robert Saleh. So I think that's an underrated element to them. Everybody talks about the offense as they should. San Francisco has an offense that I think is very scary for a lot of playoff teams. I think you look at them and say they can run the ball. Eli Mitchell is one of the more underrated explosive backs in the NFL. I think George Kittle is an absolute animal, and to me is the best tight end in football and is a mismatch in the run and the pass game. Kyle Juszczyk is also a mismatch in his own right from the fullback position. Deebo Samuel is an absolute animal and one of the most unique players in the league. Brandon Ayuk's really talented. Jimmy Garoppolo is a proven winner. Whatever you want to say about him, he's a proven winner. Do I think he's the best quarterback in the league? No, but the guy wins. And he's been there before. And this team has been there before. And I think that is something that's not being discussed is the 49ers have the experience. They've been through this before. A lot of these players were on that 2019 team. And they're hungry to get back to where they were. And yeah, everything didn't go well for them 2 years ago. But I think this year's team could take a lot of people by surprise. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made a deep run, if they put the pieces together. I also really like their offensive line. Trent Williams, Alex Mack, Tomlinson, McGlinchey. This is a offensive line that is really solid, especially in the run game. So this is a team that can really play with everybody. And I think we've seen that at their peak. I also would say about the Niners, finally, they're a team lately that has been really playing pretty good football. Like they've lost 1 or 2 games over like the last 8 or something, but for the most part, they have been a much better team over the second half than the first half, and that is important to me. So San Francisco is a team that I would rank as a dark horse. I think a lot of people don't see them as a favorite or a contender, but I think they're a team that could certainly make a run deep into the playoffs and even get to the Super Bowl if they get the right matchup, if they put the pieces together. I think they're a dark horse. That being said, right, dark horses oftentimes are also teams that there's uncertainty, so they could also lose early. But that's what I look at the Niners as. The Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are really challenging for me. Obviously, if you've seen my NFL playoff prediction video, you understand where I stand on this team. I think that they have, in a lot of ways, the potential to win the Super Bowl. I also think they could lose in the first game. And I think a big deal for the Bills is Josh Allen going to have to just dominate every single game for them to win? Like, are they going to have... Is that defense that is so highly touted, the number one DVOA defense, the number one defense by a lot of standards, are they going to make the plays necessary without Tre'Davious White? Will they be able to cover teams like the Chiefs if they go on a run? Will they be able to stop Derrick Henry if they go on a run? Or is it going to be all Josh Allen, right? Is it going to be all his improvisation? I don't know what I'm saying. Is it going to be all his right arm, all his legs? Or are they going to have other elements to surprise teams? Is their pass rush going to be able to unlock? Are they going to be able to play in uncomfortable weather? So there's a lot of questions about a team that I do think has a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of questions about them due to the fact that they lost a lot of games during the regular season that we didn't think they would lose. On the other hand, they've been borderline dominant. I mean, they have the highest point differential in the NFL. They have steamrolled teams, like steamrolled them. They are one of the lone teams from an offense and defense perspective with such high rankings across the board. And the Pats are a difficult matchup for them, in my opinion, especially playing a divisional team for the third time. So the first round is really a challenge. I think if they could pass the first round, I think they want to play the Chiefs. I think they want to face that challenge. And I think they could take anybody on, and they can beat anybody because of Josh Allen. So they're a team that I like their coaching. I love the quarterback. I think he's probably playing the best of any AFC guy. I think the offensive line is improving. I think the defensive line is deep, but can be had in the run game. I really like the linebackers. I think the corners have been playing better than I thought they would without Tre'Davious White, although they haven't been challenged a lot by big-time quarterbacks. Safety duo is phenomenal. The running game is a little bit iffy, but Josh Allen's, his ability to create there does help a little bit. And the receiving core is extremely deep. I mean, they have 5 or 6 playmakers at wide receiver that are pretty darn good. So the Bills, for me, are probably, to me, a favorite. I look at them as a favorite in the AFC. I would be disappointed, and I think Bills fans should be disappointed if they don't have a deep run in the playoffs. I think that's where I kind of stand on them. The Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think this is an interesting discussion because they haven't played well versus the best teams that they've played. Like, to be quite honest with you, when you look at their schedule and who they've played, right? The Titans, they lost to the Titans. The Bills, they lost to the Bills. The Bengals, they lost to the Bengals. I understand that they are the Chiefs, and I understand that it's Patrick Mahomes, and I understand that it's Travis Kelce, and it's Andy Reid, and it's Tyreek Hill. But have they really proven to us this year that they are a favorite to win the Super Bowl? Vegas has them as a favorite, but this is my tier rankings, right? At the end of the day, I look at their offense, and I think it's arguably the best there is in this playoff field. With the Bucs having the injuries at wide receiver they do, I think you could argue the Chiefs' offense is the best entering the playoffs. But they've even had their moments of not playing well, right? And the defense has been just on the decline heading into the most important part of the season. At the beginning of the year, they were terrible. They were awful. They were horrendous. They kind of fixed it up. Spagnuolo did his magic. But recently, even versus Drew Lock, who looked like Michael Vick out there, was making the Chiefs defense look subpar, look iffy. So I have my concerns about the Chiefs entering the playoffs the way they've played the last couple of weeks. I think their defense is overrated. I think they play too much man coverage and don't have the guys to play man coverage the way that they try to. I think Chris Jones is too much relied upon to get a pass rush. I think the linebackers and safeties are susceptible in coverage. I think what I like about them is obviously the offense. I think the offensive line is better than last year. I think when they have to, they can run the ball, although they choose not to a lot of the times. I like Travis Kelce. I like Tyreek Hill. I think Byron Pringle and Mecole Hardman have come on a little bit at the end of the year. Demarcus Robinson's a solid player. I think they have elements that you could convince me that they're going to get back to the Super Bowl. But they do not spark me just in the same way as my team does, right? As a Patriots fan. The Patriots looked like the best team in the AFC 5 weeks ago, and we'll talk about them in a bit. But they're not playing well entering the playoffs, and neither are the Chiefs. So what's the difference? I got the Chiefs as a contender. I look at them as a team that if you told me they won the Super Bowl, I would be not shocked at all. I would not be shocked at all. But from my personal perspective, I do not see them as one of the top couple teams that I would pick to win the whole thing. If I were to rank every team and say who's going to win the Super Bowl, I would put the Chiefs probably at number 4, number 5, right? Not at number 1, number 2, number 3. They've got the history of doing it, but this year the recent evidence tells us that they have not rose to the occasion. They lost to the Ravens early in the year when they were good. They lost to the Chargers. They nearly lost to the Chargers again. They lost to the Bengals. They lost to the Titans. They lost to the Bills. So at a certain point, I need to see it this year, and I haven't. The Arizona Cardinals are a team that are very interesting because the Cardinals, they were really, really good at the start of the year. And they were so good that I was questioning my evaluation of them in the offseason. But they have come back around to basically meet my expectations as probably a wild card playoff team. And that's exactly what they've become. Kyler Murray, I think, is one of those quarterbacks that is capable of winning a game by himself. I think a lot hinges on the health of DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt would significantly improve both their pass rush and their run defense. I don't know how healthy he'd be, even if he's back in the lineup, though. I think Chase Edmonds gives them an element out of the backfield that I think they can attack teams at the linebacker level. And James Conner's been really good for them. That 1-2 punch is kind of underrated. Christian Kirk, AJ Green, they make plays when they need to. I don't have a lot of faith in Cliff Kingsbury, especially in the playoffs, to give a team an edge in a game plan. And that scares me. But I do really like their defense and the way that they scheme it up and the way that they game plan on the defensive side of the football. I think they're creative at sending blitzes. I think they can rush with 4. I think they are pretty good when they have Watt in there at stopping the run, and they're athletic at the second level, but their corners are very dicey to me. I think good quarterbacks and good receiving cores could eat them alive. But they've got playmakers like Chandler Jones, Budda Baker, Byron Murphy's a playmaker, Isaiah Simmons. They've got guys on defense that definitely can make plays and change the game, and J.J. Watt if he's there. So they could kind of like entertain. Entertain is the right word to me. They could electrify, but I don't think they're like a contender type, like where I could even necessarily see them as a dark horse. I think they're a could surprise more than they are a dark horse. Because I think there's a lot that needs to go right for the Cardinals in order for me to see them to be that team that makes that dark horse type run, if you understand what I mean. I could see them doing it in one game. I don't know if I could see 2-3 games, right? And that's kind of the difference for me between the Cardinals and the Niners. And I think part of that mental block is I've seen the Niners do it before. I haven't seen the Cardinals do it before. And that's also my faith with Kyle Shanahan versus Cliff Kingsbury. So that's where I stand on that. The Dallas Cowboys, and I got a super chat, so I got to bring it up. The Greg, my man, the Greg, pop him right up here, $5. Even though the Bills will likely beat my Pats, never forget what the Bills stand for. Boy, I love losing Super Bowls. Thank you, the Greg. Appreciate it, man. If you haven't already, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button, guys. We're continuing to rank and tier rank some teams here entering the playoffs. All right. Let's go. Next, we've got the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys. The more I think about them, the more that I feel like if they get past the first round, they have the potential to do a lot of damage. I think they're the team that, as a guy that picked the Bucs to go to the Super Bowl, I would find very challenging for Tampa Bay. And the reason I say that is, without Godwin and AB, I do think that the scheme that Dan Quinn runs would be a lot more capable of slowing down the Bucs than it would with those guys in the lineup. So when looking at the Cowboys being the 3 seed, if they can beat the Niners, which you guys know, I've picked the Niners, so I think they're going to lose in the first round. But they could beat the Niners. There's no question they could. And the way that they could is through Dak Prescott, through their receiving core, passing the ball against those corners of the Niners. That is going to be the way to attack them. But when you look at Dallas, they've got a pass rush that is very impressive. They've got Randy Gregory, who's an animal. DeMarcus Lawrence, who is one of the most underrated defensive players in the game. And Parsons, who's been billed as a defensive player of the year with great versatility and great pass rush skills and athleticism off the chain. Right? Cornerbacks, I do feel are a little overrated. You know, you look at their defensive rankings, I think they've been inflated a lot by playing, they've been inflated a lot by playing the NFC East, by playing a lot of weak offenses. I think their run defense also has shown a capacity to be taken advantage of because they really don't have a lot of big people in the middle, and that is going to be tested a lot versus the Niners. So that's why I say, if they pass the test versus the Niners, they've got a decent shot because they're building momentum. They're going to gain that confidence. Dak Prescott probably means he's playing well, right? The offensive line can protect. Their run game hasn't been as strong as I thought it would be. But this is a team with all the talent in the world. They're one of the most talented teams in the NFL. They really are. They've got a coaching staff that, with Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy, they've got Super Bowl experience. That's an X factor. Are they great coaches? I think Kellen Moore is a good OC. I think Dan Quinn's a good DC. I don't think Mike McCarthy is a great head coach at this point, but they're a good coaching staff. Can Dak elevate his game if he's going to go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady, toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers, toe-to-toe with these great quarterbacks? Is he going to be able to outperform them? That's a question. But I see the Cowboys. This is interesting. So I see them more as... What do I see them as? I think they're a dark horse. I think they're right beside the Niners. I feel like that game is gonna be interesting because I think either one of those teams, Dallas or the Niners, kind of in different ways, I feel like that they are a team that could, as my screen got kind of messed up there, they're a team that I could see going far. I could see either of those teams going far. I really could. So that's why they're in the dark horse list. The Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are so challenging to rank because I think there's so much to be said about the bye. I think the bye means so much. The bye means so much in these playoffs. With only one bye, just the advantage that a team gets from the first round bye. And in my opinion, especially in the AFC. And the reason I say that is because the Steelers and the Raiders, no offense, they're pretty weak teams. They're pretty weak teams. On top of that, the Bengals are an unproven team. So the most likely team that the Titans are to play are the Bengals, right? And the Bengals do pose some issues, but in a lot of ways, they're also a little bit green. And I think a little bit, their defense is a little bit inflated by their schedule. They've played I think they've played the easiest schedule of offenses. So the Titans are in a position where it would be disappointing if they don't go to the AFC Championship. The team that I think they don't want to see is the Patriots. I think the Patriots is the team that would give them the most issues out of the Steelers, the Raiders, and the Bengals. I think the Patriots give them the most problems. But that's why they're rooting for Buffalo and Kansas City to beat up on each other, and then for them to take on the easy foe of the Bengals or the Raiders or the Steelers. That's how I feel about that. But Tennessee as a team, they can run the ball. The thing about them is interesting is they have what everyone thinks is a potent rushing attack. They're more of a volume rushing attack. They're not necessarily an efficient running attack. When you look at their efficiency numbers from a run perspective, they're not like a team that gashes people consistently. They're like a grind it out, like wear people down rushing attack. That's their intention with that. And that's their whole goal with Derrick Henry getting like 25 carries a game. And then you've got the Tennessee Titans in the passing game, which I think Ryan Tannehill has proven to mean nothing in the playoffs. Every game I've seen him play in the playoffs, he has come up short. He has never played well, in my personal opinion. And I think he is a guy that relies on the running game for him to be successful off of play action to create the big plays down the field. And A.J. Brown, in many ways, is just as important as Derrick Henry. And not a lot of people are talking about that because Derrick Henry is the guy that is the catalyst, but A.J. Brown unlocks the potential of this offense with his ability to win one-on-ones and win deep down the field and big explosive plays and create attention at the receiver level so that Derrick Henry isn't taking all the attention. Right, he almost single-handedly won that game versus the Ravens last year. People forget about that. The offensive line is scary for me. I don't think they're very good at protecting the quarterback. And if the Titans fall behind early, I think they'll be in trouble because I don't think they're a good team from behind because they can't protect Tannehill, and Tannehill isn't a good drop back passer. He's a good play action passer. He's a good work off the run game passer. He's not a good, I gotta pass, we've got to throw 45 times and I gotta win. That's not Tannehill. Defensively, they're strong versus the run. I feel they are schematically sound. They've got a lot of big people. I think they've got a solid four-man rush. They're creative enough for my liking. They've got enough speed at the second level with Jayon Brown and company. They've got some smart players in the back end, but they're not necessarily the most talented, like Jack Rabbit Jenkins, Janoris Jenkins at this point, or, Kevin Byard's an excellent player. He's the standout, but their cornerback position is kind of susceptible. They can't really play a lot of man coverage, which I think is an issue for them. But yeah, I look at the Titans and I think they're just primed in a great position given that they have the bye. So I'm going to put Tennessee at the contender spot because I would be disappointed if they don't get to the AFC Championship. And that's why I'll put them at the contender spot. The Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are definitely a team I look at and say they are very happy they made the playoffs. I don't think they're a team that expects anything of this playoff run. And my only hope with that is that they don't take that mindset, that they take the mindset of we're an underdog with a legitimate chance to do something. Now, the problem is they've got a quarterback that's never experienced the playoffs. They've got a coach that's never experienced the playoffs. They're a very young team. And they're facing arguably the team with the most experience in these settings. Tom Brady leading the way and the championship team of the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. This game was in Philadelphia, it might be a tad bit different. If the Eagles were like Washington last year, where Tampa had to travel to Washington like, they had to travel to Philadelphia, then maybe you've got more of a puncher's chance. But I look at this game and I just say, like, Philly, I feel like because of their run game, would have been such a challenging matchup for, like, the Rams, I think the Cowboys, they didn't really get a chance to play them a second time. Or the Packers even. I think the absolute worst team they could have played in this setting is Tampa Bay. And it's because of the experience. It's because of when Tampa Bay's healthy, they're one of the harder teams to run on. And when you look at them, Tom Brady's not a quarterback you want to play a ton of zone coverage on. They're facing arguably the best offensive line when their strength defensively is their defensive line. It's just a really, really tough matchup for the Eagles in the first round, which makes it hard to believe that they're going to go very far at all. So I love what they've been able to do this year. I think they've got assets to their team, their offensive line and their defensive line, that I really like, and I think it's going to give the Bucs a challenge. But really, this game for the Eagles to have a chance, their only chance is to play from ahead early. If they get behind, the game is over. The game is over, because if they play from behind with Jalen Hurts, the game is over. I think Tampa Bay is probably going to beat them. But the Eagles, I don't think they're necessarily a bad team. I think they're better than the Steelers. I think they're probably just as good as the Raiders. I think that's pretty even there, honestly. So I think the Eagles are a team that deserves respect and deserves the playoff spot. I just think they run into an absolute beast in the first round. So I'm going to put them at the no chance category. The Cincinnati Bengals are a football team that has shown a lot of upside. They're very entertaining. They're very exciting. They're a lot like the Arizona Cardinals of the AFC. The Cardinals of the NFC, the Bengals of the AFC. The Bengals, Joe Burrow, there's something about him that just makes me believe. In big games, he just has that extra eye of the tiger level to him. I look at the Bengals offense, I think they can be one of the more dynamic, but they're very, very like, what's the word? They're potent. But they're also, I can't think of the word, man. They can be really explosive, but they can also be very dangerous. And I think that's going to be their do or die. I think they're going to rather be able to win these games high flying, or they're going to lose the game due to that style. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals, with Joe Burrow, I'm not going to count them out in any matchup. I think their defense is overrated. I do think their defense is overrated. I like Trey Hendrickson. I think their secondary is solid, but they don't have a lot of difference maker. Logan Wilson being out certainly hurts them. I think they've feasted on some bad offenses that they've been fortunate to play, right? Number one strengths of schedule, facing the easiest offenses. Their run defense, I think, is a little bit inflated. Pass defense, I thought, got a little bit exposed versus the Chiefs. So I really like the offense, but I think they're a one-dimensional team, and their offensive line scares me. I think not enough people are giving the Raiders the respect they deserve in that game versus Cincinnati, to be quite honest with you. I think not enough people are talking about the Bengals as a potential one and done here. But because of Joe Burrow, I will give them the respect that they have deserved. And I think they're a good surprise. I think they're a lot like the Cardinals. Because of the quarterback, I believe in them. Because of the offense and the capacity to shoot out and win a game, I think they could surprise a lot of people and they could beat just about anybody. But I feel like anybody in the playoff field, they could also lose to. So that's how I feel about the Bengals. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we've had a couple comments here in the chat, live chat, about them being unhealthy. And I just like to remind people that it is expected that they're going to get Shaq Barrett and JPP back this week, along with Leonard Fournette. The only guy that might miss out on the week is Levante David. And yes, guys being back doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% healthy. That is totally true and fair. But I look at a team that is battle-tested. I look at a team that is very balanced. I look at a team, and I think this is the most underrated part about Tampa Bay. They have very rarely had their number one defense on the field the whole season, right? Remember the first game of the year, they lost Sean Murphy-Bunting like nearly right away. And since that point, they've been missing safeties. They've been missing corners. They've been missing linebackers. They've been missing edge players. They've been missing D linemen. When you look at this team, they have been, right, they've missed JPP, Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Whitehead's missed games, Edwards has missed games, Winfield has missed games, Dean has missed games, Davis has missed games, Sean Murphy-Bunting has missed games. They have never been able to hit their stride as a defense. And if they're able to be fully healthy as a defense in these playoffs, it could be the X factor of the entire playoffs. And that is what is scary about the Bucs, on top of having Tom Brady, who to me is the MVP, leading the NFL in yards and touchdowns, who's playing unbelievable right now. I mean, the last couple of weeks, he's been unbelievable entering these playoffs, the way he's throwing the ball, as good as he's thrown in a long time. And Mike Evans is healthy. Gronk is healthy. I think those two weapons are enough to power them. Leonard Fournette on the ground, the best offensive line in my personal opinion. This is a team that is a favorite. There's no doubt. They're Super Bowl champs. And to be the man, you got to beat the man. And until somebody beats Tom Brady, I'm picking Tom Brady. It's as simple as that. Until somebody beats Tom Brady, I am picking Tom Brady. I don't care what you say. And even when you look at them from a statistical standpoint, right? So I've got my success rates right beside me. Number 4 in pass offense. Number 12 in pass defense. Number 2 in run offense. Number 6 in run defense from a success rate standpoint. That's pretty good for having all the injuries they've had. And I think don't sleep on guys like Brashad Perryman, who I've actually liked since joining the team, in replacing some of what they lost in Chris Godwin and in Antonio Brown. So I think Tampa Bay is definitely in a spot to make a run this year. It's just a matter of health. The Green Bay Packers are the favorites to win the Super Bowl. They're the number 1 seed in the NFC, and a lot of people are picking them to win the Super Bowl. I would say this about the Packers. I think that they're a good football team with a phenomenal quarterback. I think their coach is very, very good, and he sets their offense up for a lot of success, especially in the red zone. I'm always impressed. He's very good at creating yak plays and easy yardage for his offense and his quarterback. And I think that they're a defense that has the capacity, a lot like Dallas, to make a lot of big plays with some of their splash playmakers that they have. The X factor with the Packers is that they're getting some guys healthier, like Tampa Bay, where Alexander could come back, Bakhtiari could come back, Zadarius Smith could come back at some point, and they could all make noise. The one area where I am very concerned about the Packers, where I'm not concerned, when you look at teams like the Bucs and the Bills, statistically, these teams are pretty much good across the board. They don't really have any weaknesses from an analytical perspective. From an eye test perspective and a statistical perspective, the Packers are not very good defending the run. And that's a problem that I think they might have in the playoffs versus certain matchups, which is why I think they don't want to see a team like the 49ers. I think that the Cowboys would be challenging for them. I think the Bucs would be challenging for them. I think the Titans in the Super Bowl would be challenging for them. But I look at a Packers team that, yes, is favored and arguably has the MVP. In my opinion, no, but for some people, yes. And I think that their stats don't match their record, right? And their ranking. You know, everybody kind of has them at first, but they're not a dominant team. They've won a lot of games, but they've won them rather unconvincingly consistently, you know, even down the stretch. So that's what concerns me. Like, even last week, guys, the last week of the regular season, they were losing to the Lions with Aaron Rodgers in the game. Like, there's just been too many of those moments where I say, if they play a really good team, right, are they going to be able to win that game? I think they've played, when you look at it, they haven't really played one of my top 5 teams other than the Chiefs, and that was, you know, when Rodgers didn't play, and they probably do win that game with Rodgers. But when you look at it, like, they didn't play the Bills, they didn't play the Bucs, they didn't play the Titans, they didn't play the Cowboys, they didn't play all these teams. They did play the Niners, they did play the Rams, they did play the Cardinals, they played that division. But, like, I don't know. Like, I do think there's more questions than people are letting on. I think the Packers are a favorite, and there's no doubt about it. But I do think they're the team that nobody is poking holes in. And I do definitely think there's holes worth poking, if that makes sense. And I don't think they're a guarantee to come out of the NFC the same way that a lot of people think. So that's the way I feel about Green Bay. They're the favorite, and I want you guys to know this. They have no excuse not to make the Super Bowl. They have no excuse. They're at home. They're the number 1 seed. They get the bye. They have their quarterback playing great football. They're going to be healthy. They have no excuse. They are the team that should make the Super Bowl. But as John Madden said, the best team doesn't always win. The Las Vegas Raiders are next. The Las Vegas Raiders are a team that I think, honestly, are being disrespected. I have really liked the way that the Raiders have played as of late. I am going to say that I like the Raiders. I personally cheer for them. I think they are an extremely, extremely fun team to watch. I think they're arguably the most entertaining team this year when you look at their games. I mean, when you look at that Chargers game, that Ravens game, they had some games this year where they played absolutely, the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, some amazing, entertaining games. Do I think they're one of the more talented teams? No. But I think when you look at them from a statistical perspective, right? And I've got my big handy notebook right beside me. They are underrated, right? They are top 5 in pass success rate. They are top 7 in run defense success rate. They are top 20 in all categories, including pass defense and run offense. And I think they've gotten better as a run offense. I think Josh Jacobs, this offensive line, has gotten better down the stretch versus the Colts, impressive victory, versus the Chargers, impressive victory. Those are 2 borderline playoff teams that they beat to get to the playoffs, guys. Don't take them lightly. Derek Carr is really, really good, man. Derek Carr is good. And Derek Carr is clutch. This guy has won 4 playoff games this year. 4 overtime games, I mean, which might as well be playoff games because without those games, they don't make the playoffs. Defensively, they've got a 4-man rush that can get after you. And Gus Bradley plays a very, very tight defensive scheme. It's not creative. It's very simple. But what it does, it's easy to diagnose, but it is simple and effective. And they can rush the passer. Max Crosby led the NFL in pressures. They can get pressure on you, and they can stop the run now as well. So I'm concerned about the cornerback group. I'm concerned about the safeties. I am concerned about their coverage unit, but I think they're getting better versus the run. They're getting better running the ball. Derek Carr makes plays. Darren Waller is healthy. Hunter Renfro's a freaking stud that nobody talks about. They've got Djax to stretch the field. They've got Bryan Edwards and Zay Jones as solid complementary options. I think the Raiders are being slept on. I really do. I think they're being slept on, and Lenny brings up Yannick Ngakoue. I think they're being slept on. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they beat the Bengals in the first round. I think the Raiders are a good surprise because I think, hey, let me just say, they could beat the Bengals. If they beat the Bengals, and let's say the Bills beat the Patriots, the Raiders wouldn't be totally outmatched versus the Tennessee Titans. That is not particularly a great matchup for the Tennessee Titans. So I'll just say about that, about John Madden's team. The Raiders, I think there's reason to believe, if you're a Raiders fan. The New England Patriots, I think there's reason to believe about the Patriots, but unlike the Raiders, they have been playing not great football. I think the New England Patriots lately have been disappointing. And I brought this up on the bottom line. At a certain point, I thought that they were in the contention to be one of the best teams in the AFC. And entering the playoffs, my expectations for them have completely weathered, or whatever that word is, and have deflated, like Deflategate, like Tom Brady's balls. And personally, I see New England as house money. As a Patriots fan, I see the Patriots as a team that win, lose, or draw, I'll be happy. You know, when you sit back and you look at it, a rookie quarterback to make the playoffs, I'm happy about that. Did I expect them to win in the playoffs? Possibly. And do I still expect them to win in the playoffs? Possibly. But if they lose, I wouldn't be disappointed. I'd be like, okay, that was a good season with a rookie quarterback. Met expectations, but didn't exceed them. If they go on a run, it would exceed expectations. And I see the Patriots as a team that's really well coached, that has not been playing like they're really well coached. And that is where I'll really bring up with the Patriots. The Patriots are losing these games in ways that the Patriots don't lose games. And that is what's entirely disappointing about the Patriots for me. Is not that they're being out-talented or outplayed. A lot of times the other team is starting faster than them, and they're outplaying them for the rest of the game, but they can't seem to come back because they make too many critical errors. Whether it's Mac Jones throwing interceptions or fumbling the ball, it's special teams errors, punt blocks, block kicks, offside, penalties, stupid unlike Patriot mistakes. And that's why I look at New England as a potentially dangerous team where I say, if New England cleans this stuff up and returns to their form in the mid-season, they're as good as any AFC team. They're as complete as any AFC team. When Mac Jones is playing at his peak this year, he's a really capable quarterback. And they can run the ball. They can play defense. They can kick. Nick Folk's going to win you a game at the end. I think that them playing the Bills is really interesting because this is the third time they've played them, and it's Belichick's third time crafting a game plan for Josh Allen this year, which I think is really interesting, and they're very good in the elements. So all of those things are X factors for New England. So I look at the Patriots as a dark horse. I do. I think that they could easily lose the first game. But I think you're looking at a Patriots team that if they beat the Bills, guys, if they beat the Buffalo Bills, which is a big if they go to Buffalo and win, they're a real threat. Like, that is a team that if you beat Josh Allen in his building in the first round, you are legitimately a real threat to go far, especially versus a team in the Titans in the next round who you already beat. So I see the Patriots as a dark horse. The Rams are so tough. So tough. And again, to reclaim that and restate that, if the Patriots win, right? And they've beaten the Bills already this year. I think a lot of people forget that. They beat the Buffalo Bills this year in Buffalo, in the venue that they are playing this weekend. And really, what it comes down to me is the Belichick's game plan. We'll discuss this in depth. But Belichick's game plan on defense, and really, it comes down to, for me, point blank period, the first quarter. If the Patriots get a lead, I think they're going to win the game. I honestly do. If the Patriots go out to a 10-0 lead on the Bills, I think they're going to win. If the Bills lead 10-0 at the end of the first, they lost the game. It's over. Might as well go home. So that's kind of how I feel about that for the Patriots. Now, the Rams. The Rams with Matthew Stafford, I think they've shown a capacity to have a very high ceiling, but they've also shown an ability to have a very low floor as well. They've kind of lived on the edge, and I think Sean McVay, he kind of gets a little bit kind of like let his hair down a little bit with Matthew Stafford. You know, he doesn't coach his offense or script his offense, I think would be the proper way. Script his offense to be consistent with Stafford. I feel like it's very boom or bust right now, especially without Robert Woods. You know, Robert Woods was that intermediate threat, that consistent chain mover. And I feel like without him, the team has been too boom or bust. The run game has gotten a little bit better. Some people, by the way, are hyping up Cam Akers like that is a big deal. Like, bro, Sony Michel is just as good as him. I'm sorry. But anyways, Sony Michel has been playing really well for the Rams. I don't think he's getting any respect for that. But anyways, Sony, do your thing, bro. Offensive line-wise, I think the Rams are solid. I don't think they're great. I think we've seen games where they can collapse, and I think their interior three definitely have issues with pass protection at times, and that's where when Stafford keeps getting hit, that's where he can make mistakes. Defensively, they've got a really strong front four. If you allow them to play from out in front and they can get after you with Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, and Aaron Donald, they can be a real handful. And they're just creative enough defensively where they can be a challenge in that regard. But if you play on even balanced terms, you can pick them apart through the run or the pass game. And I'm going to be really interested to see how their psyche is entering this next game versus the Cardinals after losing a 17-0 lead to the Niners. I wonder what impact that has on that game. I do wonder about that. But I think the Rams have a lot of upside. I will say that much. I think they've got a lot of upside, but they've also got a huge downside. So I think the Rams are a dark horse. I think they're one of those teams that if they can catch fire, they're as good as anybody. But I could also see too many downfalls throughout the regular season that do scare me about this football team. And I don't really love how they're playing right now entering the playoffs. But there's a lot of those type of teams, right? I don't think anybody entering the playoffs is really playing that well, to be honest with you. So, those are my tier rankings for the 2022 NFL playoffs. If you enjoyed, don't forget to Gronk spike that like button. Let's get back to this. It is Mitch. Thanks, guys, for watching. I appreciate you all in the chat. If you want to ask me any extra questions, you can ask me a couple questions if you like. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes. Sports Fan says it's an L of a list. Hey, man, this is just my opinion. As I always say, and with my predictions, this is just my opinion. This is just how I feel about these teams. I could be totally right. I could be totally wrong, bro. This is just my opinion at the end of the day. You have your opinion. I have my opinion. And I hope I did enough for you to give my reasons why on that opinion. Alex, what's up, man? I don't really think that the Eagles do match up well with Tampa, but we'll find out in the game. What's up, Memorabilia? Thank you so much, man. Lenny, what's up, bro? Corey says, if Tom meets Green Bay again, how do you see that going? That's a good question, because I know a lot of people are wondering about my playoff predictions because that I didn't actually have that happening. And I responded to a couple of those comments. I think if Tampa Bay plays the Packers, I will pick Tampa Bay to win the game. Because I think Tampa Bay is a challenging matchup for the Packers. They beat them twice last year. I think Todd Bowles has the upper hand on Matt LaFleur, has a good understanding of what they do. I think a very underrated aspect of the Packers is they need to run the ball to have some success. They're not a team like the Bucs where they can just throw 50 times. That's why Rodgers doesn't have as many attempts as Brady does, because their run game is just as important to their success as their pass game. And the Bucs have in the past shut that down. I think Carlton Davis is one of the more underrated corners in the league. It can at least hold his own versus Devontae Adams. On the other hand, I think that the Packers defense is a little bit overrated. I think that the Bucs can run the ball on them. They have that mental edge on them as well, where they've beat them in the past in their own building, and that could come to play as well. Like we've seen with the Bucs versus the Saints, that is certainly something. I mean, if you've played a team before in sports and you've gone into the game knowing that you can never beat that team and you've struggled to beat that team, there's always that moment in your brain where you're like, can we really do this? Right? So I do think that the Bucs are a tough matchup for the Packers, and I definitely think they're the toughest matchup for the Packers overall. So if that matchup did happen, I'd probably end up picking the Packers. Obviously, it will all depend. I'm going to change my picks throughout the playoffs depending on how these teams play in the playoffs. But just remember, this is something that we can't forget, right? A team might not look very good in the first round, but that might depend on their matchup, right? And they might actually, and especially the way the playoffs are this year with no really super superior teams, a team could have a more challenging matchup in the second round than they do in the third round, or the first round than they do in the second round. So just remember that, right? Like, what's an example of that? Like, I think like there's a couple of teams where you could look at them after the first round and be like, I was disappointed with their performance. They were a favorite. They didn't play that well. But maybe they played in the second round an easier matchup than they had in the first. What will it take for Mahomes to reclaim his throne as the best quarterback in the league? I think he's going to have to go on a really good playoff run here. He's going to have to play mistake-free football. He's going to have to get back to his big plays. And he's just going to have to play more consistent. The number one thing I see from Mahomes, as much as everyone wants to bring up the, turnover luck and all that stuff, what I'm missing from Mahomes is the rhythm. What I'm missing from Mahomes is the consistency and his mechanics. And this is evident through anybody that watches Mahomes. You don't have to be a quarterback whisperer. You don't got to be a throwing expert. Watch Mahomes play for a whole game. There are throws that an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, their mechanics are so refined. They don't miss throws the way that Mahomes misses throws. And a lot of times Mahomes gets away with it because his offense around him is so good that it doesn't really matter. And this year it's come back to bite him a little bit. And he's so good at improvising that sometimes he can make up for a big play for missing a play earlier. The easy completion he can make up with a big completion. And I think the consistency for Mahomes needs to be better. That's how I feel about that. What else we got here? I like that nickname. LaShonda, I like that nickname. Sports fan is explaining how the Eagles will beat the Bucks. Slay on Evans, Maddox on Gronk. Okay, that's the first problem. You got a 5'9" cornerback on a 6'6" tight end. That's going to be a problem, I think. Our offensive line should at least do well versus the D-line. I think that's fair. Coaching advantage, I think, is false. And you said, I don't like their secondary. I like their secondary, so that maybe that's where we're off a little bit. I like the Bucs secondary. You Wish says Tampa was an example of not playing well against the Washington football team when they went up to match up with the Saints. That's true. Mr. Alex says that Brady can throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns with the Pee Wee receivers. We got some Go Pack Go in the chat. Alex says Kansas City always hot in the postseason. I'd be surprised if they don't make it. Titan says, what's up? Can the Titans go to the Super Bowl? Titan VMC. What's up, bro? Yeah, they can. I think they can. I think that they've proven that they can beat the Chiefs. They can beat the Bills. I think those are 2 primary teams that they might play. I think that they need Derrick Henry, though. They need Derrick Henry healthy, and they need A.J. Brown, Julio. Those guys need to play. They need to play well. But I think if they get a lead in these games, they're in a good spot. If they have to trail and come back, they're in a bad spot. And that's really what it's going to come down to for me for the Tennessee Titans. Corey says, how do you think Brady will win with the injuries? So I think Brady has just shown a capacity to win without his best players year after year, time after time. There's so many examples of it where he's been able to overcome it. He won a Super Bowl without Gronk. He went to a Super Bowl without Edelman. He almost won a Super Bowl without Edelman and Cooks. He went to an AFC Championship and was leading in the game versus Peyton Manning with Riche Caldwell. He went to an AFC Championship with Kembrell Tompkins. He went to he almost won a Super Bowl with Gronk with a broken ankle. He won a Super Bowl with Philip Dorsett as his number 2 receiver. What else? Like every year you can think of, like the guy has done it. Like in 2015, he had neither of his tackles, had Steven Jackson as his running back, almost beat one of the best defenses I've ever seen in my life. Like he's just done it. And, I think with Brady, he's just so mentally good. I think for Brady, a lot of it is the offensive line. I think if the Bucs offensive line protects Brady, then the Bucs will be fine. Because I think the Bucs have enough skill talent. Like, don't sleep on Brashad Perryman. Like, I understand he's been cut by a bunch of teams. For whatever reason, he plays well with the Bucs. He's been playing well for them the last few games. Cyril Grayson has a rapport with Brady. Like, these guys got legitimate speed, like 4.3 speed. Like, the Grayson kid was a track star at LSU. Perryman was like a 4.29 guy in the combine. Like, these guys can run. They can get open. Scotty Miller can separate down the field. They've got explosive ability. And then, guys, Tom Brady has, like, really what Tom Brady has needed over the years is 2 weapons. Right? Edelman and Gronk, they won 3 Super Bowls with, right? This year, they've got Evans and Gronk. Like, Evans and Gronk, and then you throw on Brait and Tyler Johnson and Perryman and Grayson and Fournette and Ronald Jones and Bernard. Like, that's enough. To me, it's not up to the receivers. It's up to the defense. That is what it is for the Bucs. If the defense of Tampa Bay performs and comes to play, they've got as good of a chance as anybody else. Brady will take care of his. It's the defense that needs to rise to the occasion like they did last year. That is where I stand on the Bucs. What do I think about the Raiders playing the Bengals in the snow? I think that's interesting, actually. I haven't really thought of how that would impact the game. Personally, I think that would help the Raiders. And the reason I say that is I think they're stronger at the line of scrimmage. I don't know why, but I'm using a coaster to go like this. I don't know what I'm doing. But anyways, yeah. I think that would help the Raiders because I think they're better on the defensive and offensive lines. And I think they've been running the ball better than the Bengals have recently. And I've been talking negatively about the Bengals. I like the Bengals. Like, Bengals fans out there, don't feel like I hate your team. I like your team a lot. I love Joe Burrow. I love Jamar Chase. These guys are awesome. I hope they do really well. I'm just trying to give you my thoughts on the games. I'm not hating on anybody in particular. And I know a lot of people will think that's the case. Thank you, Hector, man. Lenny says, what would you say is the difference between the Raiders roster in preseason and how little you thought of them? Yeah, I got the receipts. The secondary has been much better than I thought. I think that was a huge weakness that I looked at and I said they can't overcome this. Secondly, the pass rush. The pass rush has been so much better than I think anyone would have thought, and I think including you, Lenny. I think that I thought they were a decent pass rush before the year. Don't get me wrong. I like Crosby. I like Ngakwe. Like, you know that. But I didn't think they were going to be this unit where Max Crosby's going to be the best pass rusher in the league type of thing. Like, he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, period. And offensively, I thought their offensive line would be a problem, and it has been. Offensively, I mean, I think they've been about what I thought, honestly. Like, I think Hunter Renfrow has been better than I thought, and that's certainly something. Run game has been worse than I thought, honestly, but I think the Raiders have, in a lot of ways, been, I think it's mostly the defense, but the AFC and the league as a whole, I think, has been weaker than I thought. Some of the teams that I thought would be better have been weaker, and I think that also plays into why the Raiders have been able to take advantage. So does Seattle go back-to-back years of mediocre 8-8, 7-9, and 6-10 records for the next few years? It depends if Russell Wilson stays or not. If Russell Wilson stays, I wouldn't be surprised if they get back to the playoffs anytime soon. I mean, it's Russell Wilson. Corey says, I think the toughest matchup for Tom would be the Cowboys. Interesting. I think it might be. It might be, but I don't know, man. It's really tough to say. Do I have any upsets? You will see tomorrow. I preview all the games tomorrow. Ultra says it's going to come down to Rodgers and Brady in the NFC Championship. It might. Not a guarantee, but it might. All right, guys. That is it for this video. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for sticking around for questions. It's Mitch. Appreciate everybody being here. Don't forget to Gronk spike that like button and let me know your thoughts on my rankings in the comment section below. Guys, I got to say this before you leave. YouTube memberships. You probably see it on your screen. You can become a member right now. Become a BLVer. You get badges beside your name in the comment section, in the live comment section. You get emojis. Like one of me going like this. You get exclusive updates and more. So make sure you check it out. YouTube memberships are out now. Support the channel and get some exclusive content. And also, guys, like I said at the beginning, Underdog Fantasy, use the code BLV. They'll match up to $100. Right now, best ball tournaments on Underdog Fantasy, which I'm going to be playing probably tomorrow for the playoffs. So if you're missing fantasy football, head over to Underdog Fantasy, use the code BLV when you sign up. They'll match up to $100, and you could be playing some fantasy football during the playoffs. So that's exciting. All right, guys, it's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Peace.